I'm using my sister's account because I don't want this traced back to me. I and my husband have been married for 3 years, and I recently gave birth to our first child together. I'm also stepmom to my husband's daughter. My husband and his ex divorced 5 years ago, and while co-parenting has had its moments of tension, doesn't it always, things were mostly manageable until I announced my pregnancy. Since then, his ex has been increasingly present, and not in a good way. The past few months have been overwhelming, to say the least. I'm still recovering from childbirth, trying to study for a professional certification that could determine whether I can advance at work after maternity leave. And on top of all that, my grandfather recently had bypass surgery and is staying in our guest room for his recovery. So yeah, I'm stretched pretty thin. Yesterday, I returned home from the baby's pediatrician appointment, exhausted after waiting nearly 2 hours in the office with a fussy infant. I had just put the baby down in his bassinet when I heard water running upstairs. My first thought was that my grandfather was showering, but then I realized the sound was coming from our master bathroom, not the guest bathroom. My husband should have been at work, and my stepdaughter was at school. I grabbed the baseball bat we keep in the hallway closet and cautiously made my way upstairs. As I approached our bedroom, I could definitely hear the shower running in our ensuite bathroom. I pushed the door open, bat raised, and nearly dropped it when I saw my husband's ex-wife. She looked at me while saying, "Oh hey." Meanwhile, I'm standing there holding a baseball bat. When I managed to ask what the actual heck she was doing in my bathroom, she shrugged and said, "Mia gave me a key ages ago. I sometimes stop by when no one's home to check on things. I helped design this house with Daniel years ago, you know." I was speechless. She said this as if it was normal. I told her to get dressed and leave immediately while I called my husband. She took her sweet time, wandering around our bedroom, examining our family photos, and making comments about how different everything looked now. When she finally made her way downstairs, she actually detoured to look at the baby's nursery, commenting that the crib was positioned wrong and that Daniel always preferred a different arrangement. As she was finally leaving, she casually mentioned she had put away some dishes in their usual spots, implying she regularly reorganizes my kitchen when no one's home. I nearly lost it at that point. My husband arrived home within 20 minutes, completely horrified. He swore he had no idea Mia had given her mom a key or that she had been entering our home. When we questioned my stepdaughter after school, she reluctantly admitted she'd given her mom the spare key last year during our kitchen renovation, when she sometimes needed to grab forgotten items when we weren't home. Edit. A lot of you asked about security cameras. And yes, we do have them. We installed them after purchasing the house 2 years ago. After this incident, we checked the footage and discovered that my husband's ex has entered our house at least 6 times in the past month alone, while everyone was away. Sometimes she brought items in and out. We have no idea what she took or brought into our home. The whole situation has me feeling violated and unsafe in my own home. I have a newborn and my vulnerable grandfather here, and the idea that someone has been coming and going as they please. I keep wondering why on earth she would feel entitled to use our shower rather than just using her own at her apartment. My husband is furious and immediately changed all the locks yesterday. He's planning to have a serious conversation with his ex about boundaries, but I'm worried this won't be the end of it. My stepdaughter seems confused about why we're making it out of it, saying her mom just misses the house sometime. I'm trying to be understanding of her position, caught between parents, but this feels like an invasion of privacy. I can't stop thinking about how many times she might have been in our home when we weren't here. Has she gone through my personal belongings? Has she been in our bedroom before? Has she touched the baby's things? The thought makes me feel physically ill. My husband suggested filing a police report, but I'm concerned about how that might affect my stepdaughter, who already seems upset about the whole situation. At the same time, I don't feel safe knowing someone enters our home whenever they want. I'm at a loss about what to do next. Any advice on handling this situation without completely destroying my relationship with my stepdaughter would be appreciated. I want to protect my family's privacy and safety without putting my stepdaughter in an impossible position between her parents. Now for the first update. You guys were right. Husband's ex-wife might be more unhinged than I thought. I'm still shaking from what happened at my stepdaughter's school today. First of all, thank you for all the comments on my last post. Rip my inbox seriously. I've been trying to read through all the advice while juggling a newborn, a recovering grandfather, and now this whole mess with my husband's ex. A lot happened since I found her, so buckle up. After the shower incident, we immediately changed all the locks, as literally hundreds of you suggested. My husband was absolutely horrified when we reviewed more of our security footage and discovered his ex has been entering our home several times a week when everyone is out. And yes, the cameras show her wandering through every room, sometimes rearranging items in the nursery and going through my personal belongings in our bedroom. She would open drawers, look at our mail, and even check our medicine cabinet. I feel completely violated knowing she's been touching our things for who knows how long. My stepdaughter Mia was pretty upset about the lock change. She feels like we're accusing her of betraying our trust, even though we tried explaining that our concerns aren't about her, but about her mother's complete disregard for our privacy and boundaries. She's 15 and caught in the middle of this mess. So I'm trying to be sensitive to her feelings while still maintaining firm boundaries. To answer the most common questions from my last post: 1. Yes, we've spoken to a lawyer. 2. No, we haven't filed a police report yet. 3. Yes, we changed all locks and added more security cameras. My husband reached out to his ex's sister Rachel to try to understand what might be happening. According to Rachel, the ex has become increasingly fixated on my husband's new life since our baby was born. Rachel seemed genuinely concerned about her sister's behavior, which honestly just made me more worried. If her own family thinks something's off, that's not a good sign. Between studying for my certification exam, which could determine if I can advance at work after maternity leave, caring for a newborn, and looking after my grandfather, I was already at my limit. Then I got a call from Mia's school counselor requesting a meeting about family adjustment issues. I assumed it was about Mia potentially struggling with the new baby or the tension at home. When I arrived at the school yesterday, I nearly walked right back out when I saw who was sitting in the counselor's office. There was Vanessa. I felt completely ambushed. The counselor explained that Vanessa had requested family counseling sessions for adjustment issues, listing herself, my husband, me, and Mia as the family unit needing intervention. The counselor seemed confused when I asked why I hadn't been informed about Vanessa's involvement in the meeting. Apparently, Vanessa had claimed to have everyone's approval to arrange the session and speak for the family. I cannot make this stuff up. Throughout the meeting, Vanessa kept interrupting, talking about co-parenting strategies and speaking about me in my husband's and Mia's lives. She repeatedly emphasized her 15-year history with my husband. I wanted to remind her that they've been divorced for 5 years and my husband chose to marry me, but I kept my cool for Mia's sake. Things got even weirder when the counselor pulled out some documentation showing that Vanessa had recently updated Mia's school records to list herself as still living at our address. When questioned, she just waved it off as an administrative oversight. The counselor clearly didn't know who to believe at this point. I somehow managed to stay composed, though inside I was seething, and explained as calmly as possible that Vanessa doesn't live with us, has never lived in our current home, has no authority to schedule family counseling sessions, and certainly shouldn't be updating official records with false information. I pulled up the divorce decree on my phone, showing they've been divorced for 5 years and that custody arrangements were established long ago. That's when Vanessa started crying, telling the counselor that I was keeping her from her home and that she was just trying to maintain stability for Mia's sake during this difficult transition. The counselor looked completely torn between our conflicting stories until I showed her the documentation. I left the meeting feeling shaken and immediately called my husband. He was furious when I told him what happened. He called our lawyer as soon as we hung up to discuss filing harassment charges and possibly pursuing a restraining order. For those wondering why I didn't just confront the ex in the counselor's office, I'm trying really hard not to escalate things in front of school staff who have relationships with my stepdaughter. The last thing Mia needs is to hear that her mom got into an argument with her stepmom at school. That evening, my husband and I sat down with Mia for a difficult conversation. She finally admitted that her mother frequently talks about when things get back to normal and refers to me as temporary. The worst part is that she sometimes suggests to Mia that my husband still has feelings for her. No wonder Mia has been so conflicted and distant lately. her mother has been actively trying to undermine our relationship. I'm trying to study for my certification exam that's happening next week, take care of a newborn who isn't sleeping through the night yet, help my grandfather with his recovery, and deal with this woman who seems determined to insert herself back into my husband's life. I feel overwhelmed. I apologize for any typos. I'm typing this one-handed while holding a sleeping baby who will absolutely wake up and scream if I put him down. To clarify, since many are asking, no, we've never had issues with the ex entering our home before. According to Mia, her mom started asking for a key after I announced my pregnancy, claiming she wanted to help get things ready for the baby. Mia thought she was being helpful by giving her the spare key during our kitchen renovation last year. My husband is meeting with the lawyer tomorrow to discuss our options. I'm worried about how a restraining order might affect Mia, but I'm more worried about what his ex might do next. This doesn't feel like normal adjustment issues anymore. It seems she's obsessively focused on my husband and our new baby. I appreciate all the advice and support from everyone. I'll update again after we speak with the lawyer. I'm taking things one day at a time right now, but I hardly feel safe in my own home anymore. Now for the second update. Update 2. First of all, thank you everyone for the overwhelming support on my previous posts, both original and first update. I honestly wasn't sure if I'd have the mental energy to write another update, but things have escalated so much, I figured you all deserve to know what's happening. So, I passed my certification exam. Honestly, it's the only positive thing that's happened lately. I was studying between baby feedings and everything else, but somehow pulled it off. My workplace sent flowers, which was surprisingly thoughtful. After the school counselor incident, we immediately went ahead with filing for a restraining order against Vanessa. Our lawyer was horrified by the security footage showing her multiple unauthorized entry attempts even after we changed the locks. She literally tried jimmying windows on at least 3 occasions, all caught on our new cameras, thankfully. The restraining order process is moving along, but these things take time, which is frustrating when you're constantly looking over your shoulder. Daniel's family has been complicated. His parents are super traditional, family comes first types who've known Vanessa for 20 years. While they love me and adore the baby, there's this weird undercurrent where some of them think we should help Vanessa through her difficult time instead of escalating with legal action. His sister actually suggested we invite Vanessa over for dinner to talk things through. Is she serious? Daniel shut that down immediately, but it's created tension with some relatives who think we're being unnecessarily harsh. Mia has been staying with us full-time while everything gets sorted. It's been both wonderful and challenging. She's opening up more about her mom's behavior and seems relieved to be in a more stable environment, but I can tell she feels guilty. The other night, she helped me with Jamie's bedtime routine and actually asked if she could feed him a bottle. It was such a sweet moment. But then she got a text from her mom and her entire mood changed. In better news, my grandfather improved enough to return to his own home with visiting nurses. His recovery is going well, and it's one less thing to worry about. Jamie turned 3 months last week and finally started sleeping in 4-hour stretches. Then came the christening drama. The christening was really important to Daniel's family. I'm not particularly religious, but I agreed because family traditions matter to Daniel, and I wanted to strengthen bonds during this challenging time. We planned a small ceremony with just close family at Daniel's parents' church, followed by lunch at their house. As we were gathering at the church, I noticed Mia texting frantically, looking increasingly anxious. She kept glancing toward the entrance. I tried to convince myself I was being paranoid. We were halfway through the ceremony, the priest holding Jamie over the baptismal font, when the church door opened. In walks Vanessa wearing a white dress, carrying a small gift. She sat in the front row directly across from us, making eye contact with me while smiling. Daniel tensed beside me. His mother looked uncomfortable but said nothing. His father actually nodded acknowledgement to Vanessa. I felt like my husband's ex-wife crashing our baby's christening was somehow normal. Throughout the entire ceremony, Vanessa took photos on her phone, dabbed at fake tears, and whispered to Daniel's relatives. She kept catching my eye with these little smirks. I was trying so hard to focus on the significance of the day for Jamie. When it came time for family photos, things went from uncomfortable to chaotic. The photographer started arranging us when Vanessa simply walked up and positioned herself next to Mia, acting like she was part of the core family. Daniel, who had been remarkably restrained until this point, finally spoke up and firmly asked her to step aside for immediate family photos. "I've been part of this family for 15 years, she announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I have every right to be in my daughter's brother's christening photos." I was holding Jamie, trying to keep him calm amid the rising tension. Daniel stepped between Vanessa and the photographer, keeping his voice low but firm. "This isn't appropriate, Vanessa. Please respect our boundaries." That's when she really lost it, loudly accusing me of erasing 15 years of family history through my jealous insecurity. She actually pointed at me while holding court with Daniel's relatives, some of whom were nodding along. Daniel's cousin, Emma, who I thought was my friend, suggested maybe we should just take a few with Vanessa for Mia's sake. Daniel's brother Mark stepped in and physically guided Vanessa away, saying, "Come on, Nessa, let's get some air." He's known her forever and seemed to know exactly how to diffuse her without causing more drama. Mia looked mortified through the whole thing, shrinking behind Daniel's sister during the confrontation. We somehow got through the rest of the day. The lunch at his parents' house was strained, with relatives divided into obvious camps: those who thought Vanessa had crossed a line, and those who thought we were overreacting. Jamie, sensing the tension, was fussier than usual, which gave me a convenient excuse to step away frequently. Never thought I'd be grateful for a crying baby, but here we are. That evening, after everyone left, Mia finally broke down and confessed that her mother knew about the restraining order application. Apparently, Vanessa had told her it was just your stepmom being controlling, and that no piece of paper can keep me from my family. She'd been planning to show up at the christening for weeks, even buying the dress specifically for the occasion. What's most disturbing is learning that Vanessa has been feeding Mia this narrative that she and Daniel are meant to be together, and that I'm just this temporary obstacle. She's been telling Mia that our marriage is already falling apart due to the stress of the baby. It absolutely is not, and that Daddy will come back to us once he realizes his mistake. Daniel and I had a long talk after Mia went to bed. We're realizing this isn't just boundary crossing anymore. Vanessa seems to be actively trying to sabotage our marriage and family. She's manipulating Mia, dividing Daniel's family, and escalating her behavior despite knowing about the pending restraining order. Our lawyer says the christening incident strengthens our case, especially with multiple witnesses. We're documenting everything and moving forward with the legal process, but I'm genuinely concerned about what she might do next. This doesn't feel like normal ex-wife jealousy. There's something deeply unsettling about how calculated her actions are. Daniel suggested Mia see a therapist to help her process everything, and she surprisingly agreed immediately. I think she's realizing her mom's behavior isn't normal, but she's caught in an impossible position of loyalty. For those suggesting we cut contact with Daniel's enabling family members, we're trying to be strategic. Completely isolating ourselves might play into Vanessa's narrative that I'm separating Daniel from his family. It's a delicate balance between establishing boundaries and maintaining important relationships. I honestly don't know what's coming next, but the restraining order can't come fast enough. I find myself checking the security cameras obsessively and double-checking all windows and doors before bed. What scares me most is that Vanessa doesn't seem to care about consequences. She showed up at the christening knowing we were pursuing legal action against her. Sorry for the novel-length update. I'm still processing everything that's happened with this christening disaster. We'll update again when we have news about the restraining order or if anything else major happens, though I'm sincerely hoping for some boring, uneventful days. Now for the final update. Final update. The ex-wife saga has finally reached its conclusion. First, thank you all for your support and advice these past few months. I genuinely couldn't have survived this nightmare without this community having my back. It's been about 3 weeks since the christening fiasco, and things escalated in ways I never imagined possible. The restraining order was finally granted, but with frustrating limitations. Vanessa's lawyer successfully argued she needed access for Mia-related activities and events, which left a significant loophole. The judge seemed sympathetic, but kept emphasizing parental rights, despite Daniel having primary custody now. Those 3 weeks were honestly some of the most stressful of my life. Jamie started teething early, which meant even less sleep for me. Daniel was trying to handle everything at once: work, legal stuff, his daughter's emotional state, and supporting me when I'd break down at 3 a.m., wondering how our life had turned into this situation. Mia had been staying with us full time, which was both good and complicated. She was warming up to Jamie, even volunteering to hold him while I showered, but I could tell she was constantly checking her phone for texts from her mom. The teen therapist we found specialized in family transitions and parental alienation, and Mia actually looked forward to those sessions, which was promising. Then came the rumors. Daniel's cousin Emma called him sounding weirdly concerned about my condition. Turns out Vanessa had been telling everyone that I had severe postpartum psychosis and was making up stories about her intrusions. She'd convinced several family members that my paranoid delusions were the real problem, and Daniel was enabling me instead of getting me proper help. The worst part was learning Vanessa had started some kind of support group for alienated parents, where she shared detailed stories about us while playing the victim. She'd recruited several of Daniel's family members to attend, along with other divorced parents from Mia's school. Daniel found out when his aunt called asking if he needed an intervention for his mentally unstable wife. Despite this situation, I was feeling slightly more optimistic since my grandfather had improved enough to return to his own home with visiting nurses, one less person to worry about in our house, and Jamie had finally started sleeping in 5-hour stretches. Then last Thursday happened. I was feeding Jamie when I got a call from my grandfather's elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patel. She said someone claiming to be family had tried to gain access to his house while the visiting nurse was there. This woman apparently knew details about our family that convinced the replacement nurse to let her in. My stomach dropped. Daniel was at work, but I texted him 911 and he immediately called. I strapped Jamie into his car seat and drove the 15 minutes to my grandfather's house. When I walked in, Vanessa was sitting on my grandfather's couch, flipping through our family photo albums. The replacement nurse was in the kitchen preparing lunch, completely oblivious. My grandfather looked confused, smiling as Vanessa pointed to photos and asked questions. When he saw me, he seemed relieved, but also disoriented. "There you are. Your cousin here has been showing me pictures of your mother when she was young." Cousin. She'd convinced my grandfather she was my cousin from my mother's side. I somehow maintained my composure and calmly asked the nurse to step outside with me. I explained the situation and showed her the restraining order on my phone. Her face went pale, and she immediately apologized, saying the woman had known many personal details that she assumed she was legitimate. When I went back inside, Vanessa hadn't moved an inch. She smiled at me. "Oh good, you're here. Your grandfather has been telling me all about your summer trips to Lake Michigan. I brought him some of those butter cookies he likes, the ones in the blue tin." I told her she needed to leave immediately. She tilted her head with this concerned expression and said, "I'm just checking on a family elder. You seem so overwhelmed with the baby. I thought you'd appreciate the help." Daniel arrived just then and called the police from the driveway. Vanessa heard him and her demeanor changed instantly. She started gathering her things, but didn't rush, continuing to chat with my grandfather. What happened next was unsettling. She pulled out her phone and started showing my grandfather photos of our family gatherings that had been digitally altered to include her. There she was at my grandfather's 80th birthday, standing next to me with her arm around my shoulders. Another showed her holding baby Jamie, photoshopped to look authentic. My grandfather squinted at the phone, clearly confused. When was this taken?" he asked, looking between Vanessa and me. When the police arrived, Vanessa immediately switched to her victim role, explaining she was a concerned family member just checking on an elderly relative. The officers seemed uncertain until I showed them the restraining order documentation, and my grandfather admitted he couldn't remember who this woman was or how she was related to us. They escorted her out as she protested that she was only trying to help and had been invited. The officers found a folder in her car with printouts of our family photos, information about my grandfather's medical condition, and a handwritten timeline of my daily schedule with Jamie, including when I typically showered and napped. She was arrested for violating the restraining order and trespassing. As they put her in the police car, she locked eyes with me and mouthed, "This isn't over." The fallout was immediate and surprisingly positive. Daniel's family, who had been indecisive through this entire ordeal, finally saw Vanessa's behavior for what it was. When they learned she had targeted my elderly grandfather after surgery, even her staunchest defenders couldn't rationalize it away. His sister called in tears to apologize for ever doubting us. Mia's reaction broke my heart. She was devastated, but also seemed relieved in a way. She asked to speak with her therapist alone to process everything, and afterward requested to stay with us full time. She didn't outright blame me anymore, but never fully apologized either. Instead, she just asked if she could help with Jamie's bedtime routine that night. The district attorney is pressing charges for restraining order violation, trespassing, and harassment. Vanessa's sister Rachel contacted us, explaining that Vanessa has refused psychiatric help for years, despite the family's concerns about her increasingly obsessive behavior. She's working with us now to ensure Vanessa gets court-mandated treatment as part of any legal resolution. We've upgraded our security system again and installed cameras at my grandfather's home. His regular nurse returned, and we've implemented strict verification procedures for anyone claiming to be family. The replacement nurse who let Vanessa in was horrified and has been incredibly cooperative with the police investigation. Edit: to clarify, Vanessa is currently out on bail, but wearing an ankle monitor that alerts authorities if she comes within 500 feet of any of our residences. Her lawyer is pushing for a psychiatric evaluation instead of jail time, which honestly might be better for everyone, especially Mia. This whole ordeal has been the most stressful experience of my adult life. Daniel and I are in couples therapy now, not because our marriage is in trouble, but because we want to make sure we process this trauma together rather than letting it fester. Jamie remains unaware, hitting all his milestones and recently mastering grabbing his feet, clearly his biggest accomplishment to date, lol. Looking back at these past few months, I can see that while this was a nightmare, it ultimately brought our blended family closer. I'm cautiously optimistic about the future and grateful every day for this community's support during one of the darkest chapters of my life.